Please be seated. The court is now back in session. The floor is once again given to the prosecution to continue putting questions to this witness. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chirsai, at the study sessions, did you feel that Nuon Chea and Q Sampan explained the political education to you clearly?
Response: yes, they did it clearly. As I stated, they were those points that I already mentioned. They spoke about economization, engaging in good deeds, etc.
Out of the two of them, Nuon Chea and Q Sampan, who was the best teacher?
President, witness, please wait. The defense counsel, you may proceed. Kong Sum On, thank you, President. The question by the prosecution elicits speculative response from the witness for the chamber. I'd like the chamber to reject this question. Thank you.
Mr. President, it's not speculation to ask somebody who was present at a basic study session for 3 days who was the best teacher. It's not speculative in the slightest. We all know from our pasts who's a good teacher and who's not.
President, since you already rephrased your question, that is fine. Then the objection is not valid. Witness, you may respond to the rephrased questions by the prosecution. Response: whether the teaching is good or bad, it's difficult because they were from the same party, so the main message was the same. I could not say which one was bad or which one was good. It was the same message that conveyed. Politically, they were from the same source.
Both bad, both medium, both good. Which is it, please?
Based on my analysis, there was nothing bad at all, because the message was about economization and about engaging in good deeds, which is stuck in my mind. When you engage in good deeds, it means you would receive in return good consequence, regardless of which society you are living in. And there was nothing about any of the bad deeds.
At the end of a study session, would there be a closing address by one of the leaders?
At the conclusion of the study session, I cannot recall exactly what happened because there were many people who actually opened the study sessions, and I can recall who actually made the closing of the study sessions. And on top of that, it's been almost 40 years ago.
After a study session, would you go back to your job feeling motivated?
But
At the end of the study session, we did not go anywhere for a retreat or something like that. We immediately returned to our workplace because immediately after the war, we had to put our effort in the rebuilding of the country.
Now, if we take a study session lasting at least 3 days, what were you involved in apart from listening to the addresses from Nuon Chea and Khieu Samphan?
Besides listening to what was presented, I did nothing else.
Let me put the question another way. On a study session that lasted 3 days, did the speeches from Nuon Chea and Khieu Samphan last the whole of the 3 days?
It was a long time ago. I cannot recall. I went to the study session, and sometimes they switch sessions amongst themselves. That is between Nuon Chea and Khieu Samphan. But most of the presentation was made by Nuon Chea, and at that time I was also rather young.
Did anyone apart from Nuon Chea and Khieu Samphan from the leadership speak at the study sessions you went to?
Besides the two, there was no other instructor, or I never saw any other instructor.
To your knowledge, did the head of K-12, Tat Miel, ever attend a study session?
Damir, who supervised K-12, attended the study sessions as well. As he was a cadre, he attended more often than ordinary members.
You said towards the end of your OCIJ interview that in the period from 1975 to 1979, the people who led the country were Pol Pot, Nuon Chea, Ieng Sary, Khieu Samphan, and Son Sen. Is that correct?
Those people, I only knew them later on, but during that regime, I did not know them. At that time, I was part of the military or the soldiers, if you like, and I did not know about them. The period from 1975 to 79, where I worked in Phnom Penh in auto repair section, I did not meet many of them. Only later on I was told that person was this uncle or that uncle. Then I learned about that, but I never ever had any personal contact or direct contact with any of them.
You just said in your answer that you didn't meet many of them. Can you give us an example, apart from the study sessions, when you came across any of them?
All those leaders, I never met them face to face, but sometimes I saw them from a distance. I saw them getting off the car, for instance, when they went to work. And that was on a rare occasion. As I said from the beginning, I focused mainly on my work.
Which leaders did you see getting out of their cars going to work?
I saw Khieu Samphan and Noon Chea and Ieng Sari, but I hardly saw Pol Pot. So I saw Ieng Sari, Khieu Samphan and Noon Chea on a rare occasion. As for Pol Pot, I hardly saw him during the 2 or 3 year period.
During this period, did you ever read the Revolutionary Youth magazine?
No, I did not. I did not have a time or any spare time to do that, as I spent my day working.
In the time that you were chit-chatting with your colleagues after work, did you ever listen to any broadcasts on a radio?
At that time, we had a common radio, so when it, or if it was turned on, then we would listen to it. But it was not that frequent. Nobody had any personal radio.
Did you ever hear any leaders speaking on the radio?
Yes, I did. I heard Khieu Samphan speaking on the radio.
What was Khieu Samphan speaking about on the radio?
I cannot recollect it, as I state repeatedly, the same type of message was broadcast, that is about the education, about economization, about striving hard to work and build the country, to raise spirit high, to engage in the production work.
The evacuation or liberation of Phnom Penh took place on the 17th of April 1975. What happened on the anniversary of that day?
I am unclear on this question, so I decline to comment.
Let me rephrase it. Was the anniversary of the liberation ever marked or celebrated in any way?
Yes, there were commemoration of the 17th April, but I rarely attended such a ceremony as I was busy engaging in my work. I did not attend any of the commemoration.
Did any of your other colleagues at K-12 attend such commemorations?
In general, I hesitate to respond as I am unclear and I cannot recall it well.
That's a fair answer. I'll move on. On the political education courses, you said in your previous interview that they told us to be cautious and watch the activities of one another and keep eyes on one another. Which of the teachers told you this?
But
at that time, that was true. For instance, the chief at K-12 instructed us to monitor or be vigilant of people who might engage in some kind of chaotic activities at our workplace.
Are you saying that that only came up when Tamil was speaking to you? Or did it come up during the study sessions? In other words, at Bore Kaila or the Technical Institute?
During the small meetings amongst ourselves, the message was raised so that we were reminded of it, and it was not conveyed during the big meeting.
Why did you have to be cautious? What was the problem?
There was no activity, but as a principle, we hate to be cautious for any unpredictable actions that may happen.
Unpredictable actions by who?
បាទ
Usually, there would be enemy against one another or from one unit to another. So the political point of view is that we shall be cautious.
You spoke in your interview of the hidden enemy. So who were the hidden enemy? What sorts of people?
Because we did not see them, for that reason we had to be cautious. Because we could not see those enemy, those hidden enemy, and we had to rely on these policies of being cautious. And if we could see them, then they would have been arrested. And this is a common practice throughout any of the regimes. Because we could not see them clearly. For that reason, there was this preventative policy to be cautious.
You just said that the enemy could be from one unit to another. Was the instruction from Tamil that the hidden enemy were in other units?
Regarding the hidden enemy, as I already said, the instruction from above was for us to be cautioned because we could not know where the enemy was, whether they were from another unit or within our unit. For that reason, we shall be cautious all the time.
Were you ever told what to do if you found one of these enemy and were sure that they were an enemy?
If I saw a person destroying things, for example, I would tell. But I hardly saw such an incident.
You touched on this in your interview. You used the word smashing. And this was when you were talking about the destruction of vehicles. Was the word smashing ever used in connection with people as opposed to property?
As for a human being, the word smashing was not used because to use that it means it's to degrade a human life. The smashing or destruction was used on the things, not on the human being.
You mentioned in your interview that some staff from K-12 were removed for tempering. Is that correct?
At that time, although I cannot say whether that was true or not, but people were removed. I did not know the reason for the removal.
So if we take the time when you started at the auto repair unit in 1975 with 30 people working with you, how many of those 30 people were still working with you in that unit in 1979?
At the track unit, there were about more than 10 of us. There were those who were from the east or from the north. They were removed. Personally, I came from the east as well, and I was uncertain of my safety. It was still a concern to me.
In your time at K-12, do you remember ever coming across a man called Ta Sot?
I did not hear the name of Sok.
I may have said it incorrectly. Ta Sot. S-O-T. Ta Sot.
I knew the person by the name of Sot. Sometimes he brought the vehicle for repairs at my section. Yes, I knew this person. He was of ethnic minority.
When you were working at K-12, did you ever go to any other K units?
Yes. For example, I would go to the medical unit when I was unwell. As for K20, which was a production unit, sometimes I was asked to go there to look at the water pump.
Did you ever go to K6 or K7?
I went to study sessions, and sometimes I stayed at K6, and sometimes I also went to work at K6. As for K7, K7 was located near the Royal Palace, and I used to go past K7.
Was this when you were driving the soldiers and the medics around?
Yes, it was during that time. Soldiers coming from various zones would go past that part and stayed at K6. And most of the participants of the study sessions would also stay there.
Did you ever go to any meetings at the Olympic Stadium?
I cannot recall whether I attended any meeting at the Olympic Stadium. So since I'm not clear, I declined to respond to this question.
Mr. Chiasai, thank you very much for your time. I have no further questions. Thank you.
President, thank you, prosecution. The floor is now given to the lead co-lawyers for civil party to put questions to this witness. Civil.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors. Good morning, everyone in and around the courtroom. Good morning, Mr. Jiasai. My name is Beini Ye. I am one of the international civil party lawyers, and I will be putting some questions to you today. I want to start talking about the time of the liberation, around the 17th of April, 1975. In your interview with the investigators, you mentioned that after Phnom Penh was liberated, you were ordered to help move civilians out of the city. I can cite the ERNs for that. English would be 007 66 337. French would be 007 66344, and Khmer ERN 002 04084. Now my question is, when did you receive this order to help moving civilians out of the city at that time?
Response. In 1975, I was still working as a soldier. At that time, people had to be evacuated from Phnom Penh when Phnom Penh was liberated. I did not engage in driving people or removing people from each home. My commander would ask me in my capacity as his subordinate to help evacuate the people. I took a ship, and on that trip I was ordered by my commander to protect the people, and I was afraid of being drowned in the river that I only went on the trip by the ship only on one occasion. I never went there again.
Let me ask you first, who was your commander who asked you to protect the people on the ship?
Response. At that time, he was not really the actual commander of the division, but he was my superior. I don't remember his name. Again, the thing happened more than 40 years ago, and I can't remember them well.
Can you recall what this commander, this person, told you about where these orders came from?
Response. No, I was not told in detail where such orders could have come from. I was just asked by him to go and help the people during the evacuation.
And did he tell you that on the day of the liberation or before that?
Response. He told me when people were being evacuated already, because he said that as a soldier I would also be in charge of assisting the evacuation process, but that this order was not made before that. It was made during the course of the evacuation.
And can you tell us where exactly you were at when you were helping to move the people out of Phnom Penh?
Response. I've indicated I was not engaged in going to people's home to bring them out of their home during the evacuation. I was only on the ship with the people who were already boarded the ship.
And where did the ship come from and where did it go?
Response. I don't remember from which unit this ship could have been taken from, but I was on that ship only on one occasion at Brek Po location at the dock, and indeed I was young and was excited to be part of the trip, but after that I was afraid and I would not wish to be there again.
And how many people were with you on this ship?
Respond, are you referring to only the civilians or along with as well as the soldiers?
I would like to know for both how many civilians and how many soldiers.
Response. I don't remember because even things that written down on a piece of paper could easily be forgotten, let alone things that are stored in your memory, things that happened several years ago. The ship could have carried 100 people, but then although the actual weight could be like 100, then the ship may carry like 30 people. It depends.
So, for you to give me an estimate, was the ship full of people, crowded with people?
Response. There were about 5 soldiers who would be accompanying a group of 30 people on each trip.
Thank you. And were there other ships or was there only one ship?
Response. I was on the trip on one occasion only, and there were a lot of people, and I did not go there again to see whether there were other ships involved.
You said that 5 soldiers were accompanying 30 civilians. What does it mean to accompany the 30 civilians? To do what?
A response. Indeed, we were to protect them. That's what I was saying.
What was the danger that they were facing?
Response. I could not see what kind of danger that could have been posed onto those people, but I was asked by my superior to be there, so I had no choice, but we had to be there to be with the people as a soldier. So people could feel warm already when they were accompanied by soldiers.
Did these soldiers carry weapons?
Response. I don't remember whether they were armed. I just don't recall this. But I can say that most of the time they were not armed.
And did you speak, or any of the other soldiers speak to the civilians?
Response. As long as we were Cambodians, we were on the same trip, we would talk to one another.
What did you tell them what your role was?
Response. Without telling them, those people knew very well who I was because we were in uniforms, so they knew that we were soldiers.
And did you have any orders on what you should do when civilians refused to board the ship or refused to go in the direction they should?
Response. No, I did not receive any such order because people could have already been boarding or boarded the ship when I came there with my colleagues.
And who directed them to board the ship and to go where they should be going?
Response. At that time, I was rather young. I would just act upon orders, and I did not ask questions concerning this because as a soldier, we were already tasked with protecting the people there.
Did any of the civilians on board refuse to go or made comments about not willing to leave Phnom Penh?
Response. No, I don't remember this.
You just said that you spoke to the civilians on the boat. So what did you talk about?
Response. It was a normal conversation. It was just normal, and I was not in a situation that I was angry with them or they were angry with us. It was a normal situation and conversation.
And do you know where these people went to after they left the ship?
Response. I took the trip with the people to Prey Po location in Kampong Cham. When we were docking, then the people or the authority in Kampong Cham was handling the civilians, and they took the civilians from there, and I have no idea where they could have been going.
So throughout the entire trip, the civilians were accompanied by soldiers from the time they boarded the ship until they left the ship and beyond. Is that correct?
Response. Yes, it is correct. We were with them all the way from the beginning until we reached the destination. After the people were received by the local authority, then we would return.
And this accompaniment by soldiers throughout the entire trip was for their protection, even though there was no apparent danger. Is that correct?
Response. I think as a subordinate, I do not know much about this. I acted upon orders only.
Now I would like to talk a bit about the civilians that you saw on the boat. Between what age were these people?
Response. These people were from all different range of age. For example, in the whole family, we could see people like children as young as 3 months old.
Were there any sick people on the boat as well?
Response. I think the question is rather detailed and specific. I don't remember having seen any people getting sick during the trip.
Let me clarify my question. I was asking about people who were sick before they boarded the boat.
Response. I don't know whether people were sick before they boarded the ship or not. I didn't pay attention to that.
And can you describe what belongings they were carrying with them?
Response. They could have been carrying some small belongings, light belongings, and I think I don't remember the detail, but they could have been with some belongings.
Thank you. I would like to move on to the next topic that has been discussed already previously. I would like to ask you a couple of questions on the political study session. You mentioned that during this session, the speakers would encourage you to work hard. Did they tell you anything about what it means to work hard?
Response. As a part of political session and education, we were treated as like children as opposed to parents who were our superiors. So we were educated on how to work very well, how to be good at economization, and I think I already responded to this kind of question before.
Did the speakers mention anything about what should happen to people who did not work hard enough?
Response. Normally, during that time, people would be criticized or refashioned. They would not be tortured or badly treated. They were just educated or like refashioned, as I indicated, when they did something wrong.
And can you tell me how do you know about the refashioning or re-education?
Response. There would be very frequent meetings in the evenings. It was part of the livelihood meetings, the meetings that could be convened on a daily basis, where people could criticize others and take criticisms.
You mentioned frequently that you were focusing on your work, and that's the reason you could not pay attention to other things. Was that your understanding of hard working, to be working non-stop, 24 hours a day? And was that the meaning that speakers would give to this?
The President, witness, could you please hold down? Counsel Kanawaz, you on your feet. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe the question assumes facts that are not exactly either in evidence or inartfully or inaccurately put. The gentleman indicated what he was doing, whether he was working 24 hours a day and what have you. That's a questionable part of the question that I have. So if it could be rephrased to comport with the gentleman's actual testimony, I would be most grateful.
Let me rephrase the questions. You said that you focused on your work and you did not pay attention to other things. My question is, was that reason for this because you were told in these political study sessions that you had to work hard?
Response. to work hard doesn't mean I had to work 24 hours a day. We just had to observe some rest, because by 11 a.m. people would be allowed to have their lunch, and then we continue working. So people could never work 24 hours, otherwise everyone could have all died because of exhaustion. So I can say that we did not have to work 24 hours to justify the term working hard. We worked our best during the allocated time for our working time. So again, allow me to state once again that I was not asked to work 24 hours to prove that I worked hard.
Thank you, Mr. Jiasai. I have no further questions. I wish you a good journey home.
The President, thank you very much, counsel and witness. I would like to know whether judges of the bench wish to put questions to the witness. Judge Lavergne, you may now proceed.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd just like to ask a few questions to clarify some of the answers we've already heard from you, Mr. Witness. First, you told us that you've never heard during the Democratic Kampuchea period of S21. Am I correct in that understanding?
Response: Yes, you are, Your Honor.
And did you hear of it after the Democratic Kampuchea period?
Response: No, I didn't. I didn't hear about this after the Democratic Kampuchea regime, even after the fall of the regime. When we went into the jungle, I did never know anything about S21.
Witness, have you heard anything about the existence of security centres during the Democratic Kampuchea period?
Response: I may say simply that, Your Honor, during that time, I paid greater attention to performing my tasks very well, so I was less interested in knowing the other things.
Je comprends pas.
I'm not entirely sure I understand. Were you interested, or are you interested now, in knowing what happened to the people who disappeared in K-12 or in your office, other offices?
Response: What I learned was that people could be removed and regarded as elements. And at the east, Sao Pum, who was the head of the zone, was accused of being a traitor. And as a man who was from the same east zone, I was implicated as an element.
Et alors, quelles
All right. Well, what exactly were you afraid of?
បាទខ្ញុំខ្លាច
Response. I was afraid that I would be killed. So I was very worried that I would end up being executed.
But why were you afraid of being executed? You have just told us that you only paid attention to your work and you had absolutely no idea of what was happening to people who disappeared around you. What reasons were there for you to be afraid of being executed?
យ៉ាង
Response. Indeed, I worked my best, but I had reasons to be afraid because I noted that people had been disappearing and we didn't know to where they could have gone. So at the time when we were performing our tasks, we couldn't help but being worried, having noted this kind of situation. If we knew that these people could have been sent to any particular location, our fear could have been reduced.
Donc,
So what you were really frightened of was the uncertainty of just not knowing what meaning lay behind those disappearances. The disappearances, as far as you were concerned, could also mean that the people had been killed.
បាននិយាយហ្នឹងបាទ
Response. Indeed, we could not guess what could have happened. We only speculated when people had been removed that they could have been moved to other locations, but we could never say that they could have been killed.
What did your wife do during the democratic Cambodia period? What was her activity?
ជំនាន់
Response. She was tasked with cooking, preparing foods for the foreign visitors. We were not yet married at that time.
Which office did she work in?
Response. It was the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She was at house number 2. House number 2 was for preparing foods for visitors, for people who would be traveling to provinces.
Do you know if she too noticed that certain people around her were disappearing?
Response. Yes, she did. She used to tell me about having noted the disappearances of her colleagues.
et elle aussi, elle a...
And was she afraid as well?
Response. I am not in a position to talk on behalf of my wife about her feeling, but I could guess that she must have been fearful.
Vous aviez eu
You had very long days of training with the senior leaders of Democratic Cambodia. Did any one of the participants dare to ask any of the leaders what happened to the people who were disappearing around you?
Response. I'm afraid I cannot respond to this question because my memory doesn't serve me very well.
But you yourself were seriously preoccupied. You didn't know what was happening to your colleagues at work. You were listening to speeches encouraging you to do your job well, but did it never occur to you to ask, I don't know, Mr. Nunchia, for example, to find out what was actually happening to your colleagues who were disappearing?
Response. In that time, in my capacity as an ordinary person, I could have never been close to such senior people like these uncles.
bien.
Very well. I don't think I have any more questions to put to this witness. Thank you, Mr. President.
The President, thank you very much, Judge Lavanya, and thank you, Mr. Witness. It is now time for lunch adjournment. The Chamber will adjourn until 1:30 when the next session resumes. During the adjournment, the court officers are instructed to assist Mr. Witness and make sure he is properly assisted and have him return to the courtroom by 1:30. Counsel for Mr. Nunchia, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. Very briefly, I've just been informed that our client is suffering from a backache, a headache, and a general lack of concentration. And for those three reasons, he would like to retire to the holding cell for the afternoon. And that's our first application this morning. I have one other brief point I'd like to raise. And I'm referring now to a recent decision of the Supreme Court Chamber. And this is document number E176/2/1/4. And this is the decision on Nunchia's appeal against the trial chamber's decision on Rule 35 applications for summary action. And I'm sure everyone recalls those applications. Among many other things, this is what the Supreme Court Chamber had to say with reference to the trial chamber's allegation that we had made unduly repeated applications. Quote, the trial chamber, this is paragraph 21, quote, the trial chamber later considered this behavior, that is to say the alleged repeated applications, in conjunction with other allegations to constitute evidence of a, internal quote, consistent pattern of professional misconduct, end quote, and referred this misconduct to the competent bar associations. Upon review of the relevant Khmer and English transcripts, however, the Supreme Court Chamber is of the view that this persistence was justified given the trial chamber's lack of clarity relating to the defense's applications, end quote. So my question for you, my application, in a sense, will you forward this order to those respective bar associations, indicating to those bar associations, that is the Amsterdam Bar Association, the New York Bar Association, that you have been overruled by the Supreme Court Chamber? Have you done that? If not, will you do it? And if not, why not? And that's our application for this morning. Thank you.
The President, first and foremost, the trial chamber has not forwarded such text to the concerned bar associations. Now the decision is before the council, and if councils are of the opinion that the decision is beneficial to them, they could take the advantage of this opportunity to forward the message to their each respective bar association. And secondly, the chamber has noted the professional misconduct of counsel for Nuon Chea, and the Supreme Court chamber has not ruled on other issues that are relevant to other councils other than the Nuon Chea council. So if Nuon Chea councils are convinced that this message is of necessity and beneficial to them, they could do so to forward the message to their bar associations. The President continues, after having noted the request made by Nuon Chea through his counsel that he be allowed to retire to his holding cell due to his health concerns. The request itself is founded, and Mr. Nuon Chea therefore is allowed to observe the proceedings from his holding cell through video link for the entire remainder of the day. Mr. Nuon Chea has expressly waived his right to participate directly in the courtroom. Counsels for Mr. Nuon Chea are now advised to produce this waiver given thumbprint or signed by Mr. Nuon Chea to the chamber, and the AV booth officers are now instructed to ensure that the audio-visual equipment are properly connected to Mr. Nuon Chea holding cell so that he can observe the proceedings from there. Security personnel are now instructed to bring Mr. Nuon Chea and Khieu Samphan to their respective holding cell and have Mr. Khieu Samphan return to the courtroom in the afternoon at 1:30. And the chamber wishes to also inform counsel for Mr. Nuon Chea that in the decision by the Supreme Court chamber, the decision shall always be made in writing. So the chamber has already ruled upon this, and if you wish to put an application before the chamber, please do so in writing, and that the chamber will accordingly respond to you in writing. And indeed, the chamber will invite written submission from other parties concerned regarding any application of yours. So you can only do that in writing. The court is adjourned.
សូមអញ្ជើញក្រោកឈរ